like, it was interesting because my own classmates who were white or Caucasian, they didn't know how to identify themselves with their peers because they were so used to mixing in with the Hispanic, Asian, and Black population group. And so I know that that was something that we talked about even at our recent 10-year reunion. We still talk about that because at our 10-year it was so colorful in a sense and diverse, and everyone talked about how, yeah, when we went off to college it was different. So I don't know, as educators, how can we prepare students for that?
That's a great question. Well, there are resources, there are grants out there. So that's one way is, writing a grant, putting yourself out there to find programs and create programs. Look at when you sign something, when you go to the doctors that has or you apply for college, or you apply to be a part of a club, an organization, and how many check boxes that they have. Having this conversation, making it aware, talking to your students about it. I mean, how many people find it, odd to talk about sex growing up? And yet, research has shown that having this conversation, despite wherever you fall in this continuum, is more helpful than not talking about it. Allowing people to identify themselves, create these opportunities to identify themselves. You can leave something blank. You can put gender. How do you identify? What is your ethnicity? Or if you need check boxes, allow for multiple opportunities to have these check boxes, or fill in the blank as well. So providing these opportunities, creating clubs and organizations. There is it's called like the MHI or something, MHC, it's like the Multi-Heritage Club, and it's kind of moving away from this concept, these notions of race and ethnicity, and just that we all are humans, and yet we all have different heritage, different lineages. And so there's this club where people who are multiracial, biracial, have different cultural identities, can be a part of that club, and they do educational things. They provide trainings. So things such as those are going to be really helpful for your students. Asking your students, how do you identify before you identify them? Allow them to talk, okay, educate me, what is that like for you? Okay, what are you struggling with? There's theories, there's models, there's a bunch of research out there. Yet you have to ask, how many 15-year-olds do you think are going to come and be like, I'm struggling with finding a balance. I know I'm 15 and I'm trying to fit in, but I'm struggling finding a balance of where I fit in high school. Let's be real. How many people are actually going to do that? How many of you would actually do that? So being that voice for them, I think that's, and advocating, I think that's going to be a huge piece of developing multiracial identity, a multi-heritage identity. I think that's going to be a huge piece. And those are just my views and my opinions. Does anyone else have any ideas or perspectives that you think might be helpful?
I just think educating and validating where the student's coming from would be helpful. I have a story to tell. We have a friend of ours whose son looks white. He's blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and fair-skinned. And he identified on something at school that he was Cherokee Indian. And he was given attention because he was definitely lying to the teacher and misportraying a group of people that have been, I don't know, have had to fight for their culture. And mom went down there and said, I disagree with what you're saying. And principals were called in and the whole works. And she said, my son identifies with himself as being Cherokee Indian, and he is a portion Cherokee Indian. And how dare you say that he's not? And so I think if we can let kids know that it's okay to stand up for yourself and be who you are and identify with whatever culture you feel comfortable with, that's one step in the right direction.
I really thank you for sharing that. That's a great example. The validation aspect of allowing them, they know who they are, they know what they are. They're growing, their identity, they're developing. So allowing them to have a voice. You have no control over how they identify, and yet as a society we assume we have so much control because there is power, and there has been this culture of heterosexual, white, religious men have dominated society. They have created all these constructs. They have created a community, a nation with their sense of identity, and that doesn't fit the vast majority of people. So allowing them to have a voice, speaking up for them, that's going to be important. And you have the power not to, and you have the power to do it. So it's up to you. Well, thank you really for sharing that. And it kind of talks about the piece of how other people identify you is almost more powerful for some people than how you identify yourself. If you're timid, if you're shy, and someone's like, Johnny, if you call yourself Native American one more time, you're getting Saturday school. What kid's gonna, oh, no, I am. No, they're probably not gonna do that. You're speaking for them, not giving them a voice. So border crossings. There is actually a fifth one, but I chose just to do 4 because the fifth one got a little complex. So there's 4 ways in which mixed race individuals negotiate their identities. So one is accept their identity assigned by society. So for example, that individual could have said, okay, you're right, I'm not Native American, I'm going to accept the identity how you perceive me. Choose a monoracial identity, which they kind of can go hand in hand, because you can accept the one is assigned to you, or you can choose your own. So choosing, so if you're both African American and Japanese, choosing that monoracial identity. Choosing a mixed race identity. So I'm both. I'm neither African American or Hmong. I'm both. I have heritage, I have family, I represent different parts of these communities, and I have experiences in those different cultures. And creating a new racial identity, which is going to get into the next piece of nothing really fits me. No, I don't really identify with any of these. I don't feel any of those really represent me. When I showed the statistics of when the census in 2010 and 2000, there was a list of like 112 different possible things that people identified with. So there's a lot out there. I'm pretty sure I can point to places on the map, and you're not going to know what country that is. Partially because that's not a core emphasis in the United States. So there's people out there that we don't even know how they identify, and we're categorizing, we're herding up these groups like, okay, Latin America, they're Latino. I have friends from different places within Latin America, and they don't necessarily like each other. They have different views, different beliefs, they speak differently. Within Europe, we categorize as people. You know, people within Europe don't get along. Africa, they're the same things. And yet we're putting them into one category. We're labeling them. So the policy. So 2010, 2011, the Department of Education required universities to do this. So to have either one of these options where a student can identify with more than one race, Hispanic, Latino, not Hispanic or Latino. They had to have these American Indian, Alaska Native, Asian, Native Hawaiian, they had to have these options, and they had to have 2 or more races. And yet a lot of the universities have 2 or more races, and that's like the option. It doesn't let you pick. And a lot of the time, what are your 2 or more races? So there you go, when you start in college, you click 2 or more races, you're not getting anything, because they don't know what 2 races you are. So now you have to go out there, and then you're going to be judged based upon, okay, do you look this? Do you act this way? Do you act? Dr. King talked about the identity models and from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So imagine if he was multiracial, like, would he act his race? No, probably would be perceived as acting his race. So that's definitely going to impact how others view him, which impacts his own identity, with his own sense of who he is, having dual identities or different heritage and lineage. So this is something new. It's this mixed heritage. So individuals choose a variety of labels when identifying themselves. And we've talked about the different possibilities, the different categories. So let's do some practice. So it can change over time. So if you are 10 years old in the store, 10?
He was
Around 10. So at this time in his life, he identified as Cherokee. Okay. 5 years later, who changed a lot from 10 to 15? Yeah, okay. So his sense of identity is going to change. From 15 to 20, who changed a lot? Okay. So it's on a continuum. How you choose to identify may change. You know, being here in Fresno, my identity is going to change than when I'm going to Syracuse, New York. it's going to be a whole different population. The community, the culture, the norms are going to be different. So having to change or choosing to change is going to impact this mixed heritage, how you identify.